Okay, here we are. So, welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Curtis of at Maitri. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I am a soul wisdom mentor and a soul sourced business strategist and an intuitive artist. And I love having conversations with other soul guided entrepreneurs just about how they show up in the world. What are your authentic ways of knowing and being, what I call soul wisdom, and how that knowing speaks to and through you, what I call soul wisdom languages. And in our conversations, we have that exactly, a conversation, an exchange of information back and forth, and we go on an exploration together. So today's guest is Steph Dodds. And Steph, I'm so excited to have you here on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I live in Sacramento, California, and I am an EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, otherwise known as tapping practitioner and educator, and soon to be author. And when my book will be released this late summer. And I train other EFT practitioners or anybody who wants to learn this really amazing tool to kind of help other people with all areas of life. Creativity, we've talked about that before. Prosperity, health, all kinds of things.
Beautiful. So let's start by talking about what is EFT, right? For anybody who is not familiar with it, or maybe who has some familiarity, can you give it to us in like plain language? What is it? How do we do it, and what is it for?
Yeah, EFT is a self-soothing stress relief technique where we call it, or I guess in the EFT world, we call it like literally having everything you need at your fingertips, because what we're doing is doing finger tapping on the body on different meridian points. And it's really riding on the wings of Chinese medicine and acupuncture and acupressure. And we are stimulating these points throughout the body where we may have some stuck energy, emotional energy, or anything can be stuck in there, trauma, limiting beliefs. So it's it's actually a really practical tool that anybody can use at any time. Yeah. And you literally tap on your body and speak out loud what is wrong or perceived wrong, so that we can be free of it. And it helps us to move through the emotions, because there's no real negative emotions. Anger has a purpose, frustration has a purpose. Like everything we experience has medicine and purpose to them, but sometimes it can get stuck. And this is a vehicle to help us get back into our flow. And even once we let go of some emotion or work through it, you can work on like mindset upgrades, things like that.
I love it. So a couple of questions. I tend to have these like questions that drop in, and I don't know if they're from people who are watching or who will watch. I don't know, but they just like every once in a while questions will drop in. So the questions that are dropping in for me, one has to do with, which meridians we're tapping on, and do we need to know when to do which one and what its function is, and all of the how and the why behind the different points. And the other is more of a statement of, I've been always taught not to speak into reality my, what the things that I'm holding inside, because if you speak it, then you're bringing it to life. And so wondering if you could touch on those 2 points as well.
Sure. So for the first one, so we have all these lines of energy, meridian lines. We've known about this for, we don't actually know how long, 6,000, 8,000 years.
Yeah, ancient knowledge.
And so what EFT does is it actually kind of puts all this amazing knowledge into a compact little sequence. So even if I'm holding anger, and like here, this is a stomach meridian right here. This is the line of the stomach. This is I believe this is the bladder. I don't have my sheet in front of me. You actually don't need to know all of the points in order to be a sensational EFT practitioner or use this tool 100% effectively. You don't need to know. I like to know those things. I'm kind of a
Yeah,
nerd
I do
about.
too.
For all my students, I have a lot of acupuncturists and therapists in my trainings.
Mhm,
And so they'll always pipe in with like, wow, this is really a really great sequence to kind of get all of the points quickly. So you go around in a circle so you don't miss any.
mhm,
But like you could tap with one hand, with two hands. It doesn't really matter because essentially one line is going down both sides of the body. So you're stimulating it either way.
mhm,
And so you start on the hand right here. Then you
mhm.
tap through the points, the top of the head, the eyebrow. The actual point is right here, but anywhere in the eyebrow will be stimulating that side of the eye, under the nose, the chin, the collarbone, and the ribs. They call it either the nipple point or the rib point, and it's down here on your ribs, under the arm, front of the wrist and back of the wrist, and then you just go right to the top of the head. So it's kind of like a all-encompassing sequence that you could do it one time or 3 times or 10 times. You could tap for an hour straight if that is feeling right. And but so I don't know if I answered your question. It like the points do matter, but you don't have to know about them in order to go through the sequence. It's like a all-in-one.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of so my I have a training in Reiki, right? So I'm a
Mm,
Reiki master teacher, and when we first learned
mm,
or when I first started training in Reiki, there's a protocol, right? And you start at the top of the head and you move down and you kind of like move throughout the body, and there are these particular points, and each of those points have a meaning, right? They're
mm,
connecting with either like your ear chakra or your throat chakra, your heart chakra, your liver. Sometimes it's organs,
mhm.
sometimes it's more energetic centers. And yet the protocol kind of takes you through all of those points from head to toe, literally. But when you kind of deepen into that, then you start to learn how to intuitively move through different points to alter away from those points or to just straight
Mm,
up, move intuitively without going through the protocol. And that I think is kind of like attuning you to feeling the energy, right? So if you go to these different points where energy is flowing, then you start to get accustomed to, oh, I can feel the energy in this point, or
mm,
I can feel it flowing more or less. And then you start to really learn to work with your intuition in that. And yet you can still do the whole thing and know, okay, until you get to that point where you can feel the
mm,
energy in your hands and you can feel or you start receiving through your own intuitive senses of move here, move there, you still are covering all the bases without having to worry about not hitting a particular spot, right? And I think that's kind of similar to what you're saying.
yeah, it's similar, and it's actually really good news because, like, if let's say we were working together and you were the practitioner, I'm the client, and I come to you because I'm struggling with some anger towards
Hmm.
someone I love or something like that.
Hmm.
It's not your job to know where I'm holding my anger,
Hmm.
right? I could be holding it in my liver. I could be holding it in my stomach. I could be holding it in my spleen. I
Yep.
could be holding it. The body has, speaking of wisdoms, the body
Yes.
has a soul wisdom, and it's doing its best to protect us. And sometimes, like, let's say, I'm driving to work and I get in a car accident, a minor car accident, and I need to also continue getting to work and then show up for the day. The body we don't have that chance to shake it off, the distress. The body
Hmm.
puts it somewhere, holds onto it because it's trying to protect us. Here, put this in this brown paper bag so I can go to work and be present.
Pack that
And
up over
then
there.
I'll deal with my stuff later. And
Yeah.
especially in today's world when we are just getting bombarded with information, watching the news can be a traumatic experience now. Getting an email, like we're going into stress response all the time. So this is a way to, no matter where that emotion or that energy is, this is a way to shake it off and empty it out,
Yeah,
acknowledge it, honor it, and move through it as
love it.
gracefully as we can.
I love it. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
full body cleanse without having
Mhm.
to actually go into every part of the body, right? Because we're moving
Mhm.
with those energetic meridians. So let's address the second question then, right? Like a lot of people will say,
Yeah.
don't speak negative
Mhm.
things because you're manifesting it in the world. And like I have my own experience of how I relate to that. And I feel like you and I kind of have a
Mhm.
similar viewpoint of it. But I'd love to hear from the perspective of EFT and from your perspective personally, what how is that empowering actually to speak these into the
Mm.
world and to especially in pairing it with the tapping? Can you talk about like that powerful combination?
Sure. And this is such a great question because this is the hardest thing for new tappers to wrap their head around. Like, I'm focusing on the negative. Ooh, I don't want to do that. I'm a law of attraction. I don't want to. So I like totally get it. And I was that person 100%. And now I view it differently. And we focus on the negative because that's the disruption in our energy field, and we want to clear the disruption. So if we're just all positive all the time, which is great, I encourage everyone to be as positive as they can all the time. I really do. But if we're not manifesting what we want, if we're not feeling good, how many times have we set an intention and didn't come true? There must be some kind of disruption there. So what we're doing, the focusing on the negative, I kind of look at it as a cleanup crew as we're going through and looking at it. Another way to look at it is if you have this garden and you love your garden,
Hmm.
and weeds start coming up through the garden. Like, you have your beautiful veggies and fruit and you have these weeds come up. You can't just go, I'm just gonna look at the flowers and the beautiful peppers, and I'm not even gonna acknowledge those weeds. Those weeds. You could do that, but they're probably not gonna go away.
And they may overtake actually the garden
Mhm.
or squash, like take away the space and energy for the blossoms that you want to grow, right? And when you started
Exactly.
talking about it, the image that I got actually was like having rusty nails in a road, right? Like if you could
Mhm.
drive around them, but eventually if you don't address it, right, like you're gonna hit it and it's gonna pop your tire and create like a bigger disaster. Or you can just get the rusty nail out of the road, and
Mhm.
then you can have this free path to come through. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
that you like pick up the rusty nail off the road and then consume it. Like you would dispose of it, right? You
Mhm.
take it away, put it somewhere where it's safe, right? Like you put it
Mhm.
wherever that is, but like you put it in a place where it's not in your pathway anymore, so that you can drive through there and feel safe and feel clear
Mhm.
and do your business, right? Like I don't know, that was just the image that was coming through.
I love how you said the weeds could take over too, because you don't want that negative to be fighting for space with your beautiful, positive intentions.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And so we have to kind of roll our sleeves up, and that's what I do as a practitioner. Like, you don't ever want to like zoom in on the negative, but if you think about it, we do have a negative bias because we're so smart problem solvers. We
Yeah.
are, we want to, if we have this big, beautiful white carpet and there's one like little stain on it, our eyes go right there. We're not like, oh, look at the rest of the carpet though. Like, that's great. And if that's your superpower, that's awesome. But we zero in on that. And then if we don't have tools like EFT, we can get stuck there. So we acknowledge it, we clean it up, we move through it so that we can enjoy the rest
Yeah.
of it.
It's the difference between seeing that spot, right? Or even with the weeds, like you see the spot and your focus is on the bigger picture or on those flowers. And so you do the action to remove
Mhm.
the obstacle, or you remove, like, you actually clean up that spot and then you move on about your day, right? You clean up the weeds so
Mhm.
that what you are doing is focusing on the positive, right? You're focused on creating the space for this beautiful thing to grow. And at the same time, that may mean that your actions at some point may need to be weeding the garden. That's still
Mhm.
focused on that positive thing. It's just
Yes.
incorporating actions that are supporting that in a bigger picture.
Absolutely. That's why to me EFT can help so much with law of attraction. So,
Yes.
so, so much because often the question is, what is standing in the way of your dreams? What is the how do you know this thing is a problem? How do you feel blocked? Like in order to unblock that disruption.
Yeah. I think the
Mhm.
thing that is often left out of law of attraction um, conversations, memes, teachings, you name it, is the intentional action piece. And I
Mm.
think that this is where it's gotten the what's the word I want to use? The reputation of being this woo, like, out there spiritual thing that has no grounding and no proof and no whatever, is because the focus has been so much on believe it and it will happen, right? If you believe it, you
Mhm.
manifest it. And yes, you believe it, and then you take steps towards that as well. Like, there's
Mhm.
actually, like, if you put out the intention, great, the universe recognizes that intention is there. But if you then only focus on where it is, or have it come to you, and you take no steps towards it, then you're putting all of the work into the universe to line things up for you to drop it in your lap, right?
Mhm.
And if you are not taking steps towards that, then all of those weeds are growing and you're just sitting there going, where's my flower? Why isn't my flower growing? Right.
Mhm.
So the more that you can take those steps, you take a step towards it, the universe brings it one step closer as well. And so, like, it's doubly important, or it's doubly powerful to take those steps, because that action has a reaction too from the energy of the universe, so that you're really empowering that process more so by weeding those things out of the way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. So it's a really cool tool. And I love the way that you presented and the space that you hold while doing it. You should definitely check out, if you're watching this and you haven't ever experienced it, check out Steph's YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Tons of resources, beautiful, just focused on different areas of life and
Mhm.
challenges that you may face. So there's lots on there. And tell us the name of your YouTube channel.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is Tapping with Steph, and I think I have over 70 videos on there now. And I was just talking to my tapping friend the other day, Brad Yates. He's got like thousands of tapping videos. And what's great is like, eh, um, even if it's not exactly what you're going through, the tapping video, something will clear. Usually feel better. And that's another thing that helps with law of attraction manifesting is the better you feel, the better it gets. And
Yeah.
so we focus on this in order, what's wrong in order to clear it so we can just feel better. And it works quickly in a matter of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whether it's a
Yeah.
little shift or a big shift. You're starting to get the energy moving.
I've even, like, since I've used this tool more, occasionally I'll find myself just like finding one of the
Mhm.
points, whatever it feels like, while I'm talking, while I'm reading, while
Mhm.
I'm doing something, I'll just be like, I'll find myself just tapping, and I'll be like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Like, that's that
Mhm.
intuitive guidance that's saying, like, oh, there's something stuck here. And because I've used this tool, intentionally, consciously, right, then I now have that muscle memory. So my body, that wisdom of our bodies, can show up and say, oh, look, there's something here. And I find myself doing it without thinking about it, and then thinking about it second and going, oh, okay, now let me tune into that and use this tool. What is really here for me? So yeah, it's an amazing tool, and it's something that is really accessible. It's really easy to do. It doesn't mean that it's always easy to sit with the emotions that come up or the thoughts that come up, but as far as like, there's so many different variations that you can do. It's, yeah, highly recommend. So how did you get into tapping?
Well, how did I get into tapping? It was one of those things where I heard it from like 10 different people, and I was like, okay, universe, I get it. I should go check this out.
Yeah.
And I've always been into health and wellness. I have my degree in health, and I'm a nutritionist and yoga instructor. And I was teaching private yoga in my living room. And with my client, she had introduced me to tapping, and we would do like 40 minutes of yoga, like 10 minutes of tapping, 10 minutes of meditation. And that ended up being our wellness practice a couple of days a week. And we were always just started smiling and laughing, like, gosh, what? Like, you feel better and you don't know why. There's something magical that happens.
Yeah.
And you're not really, at least I can only speak for myself, not really sure when it happens sometimes. You just know that you feel better. And so I just knew I needed to learn more. And I took a training, which now I teach, but I literally started tapping Monday morning after the training with my nutrition clients. And to me, it was so much more effective than anything else I'd been doing. Like, I could write someone the perfect meal plan, the perfect everything, and if we didn't deal with the anger, frustration, sadness, the
Whatever.
emotional component that was there you're just fighting up against that weed the whole time, and then the client feels doesn't feel good about themselves. And that's like this, that to me is why I really resonate really in my soul with this modalities, because it takes the shame and the blame out of any kind of reason something's not working.
Yeah.
It takes that out. It takes it out.
There's a
There's a reason that the subconscious is blocking that.
Yeah. There's a phrase that you use when you're tapping. So we go through kind of the different um, locations and speak out loud some of the things that may be coming up. And you do a really great job, I feel anyway, of intuitively tapping into what is coming up for people who are experiencing this with you or walking through it. But also, there's two things. One, I know I've heard you say before, and I've even practiced, that if the specific words you're saying aren't what really resonate with me, say the words that resonate with me, right? But then there's a phrase that you always add in, and I still completely love and accept myself, right? And maybe I didn't get that exactly right in how you say it, but that part of it is so powerful too, right? Like, we speak out those icky feelings and those icky thoughts that are like, we don't, sometimes we even think the thoughts and we're like, God, why am I thinking that? Like, that's such a horrible thing to think. And yet we send it right back into our subconscious because we're afraid to say it out loud. But when we can speak it and hear it out loud, there's really this, you can resonate with, oh, that doesn't fit, right? Like, why was I holding that in? Get that out. And then we bring in this beautiful energy of, and I still completely love and accept myself. And that's where I think that shame and blame is just like, it's like the salve to put on and like make that energy kind of just like calm it and heal it, right?
Absolutely. For example, I was tapping with someone on their business the other day, and they're just like, I just can't do it. I've tried, I've failed, I've tried, I've failed. And what do you do with that tapping? So even though I don't think I'm cut out for this. I have all this self-doubt. I've failed hundreds of times. And even though I've failed hundreds of times, I still deeply love and completely accept myself. And sometimes just in that first bit, it's like, I never realized that before. Then we tap through the points, all this failure, all this sadness, all this effort I put in, all this money I didn't make, like whatever, you just throw it all in, whatever you're thinking. You don't judge it. You don't go, oh, I don't want to say that out loud. You just kind of, I call it like word vomit sometimes. You just get it out of your system.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes the client's like, none of that crap is even true.
Right.
Like none of it. Like I'm actually come so far in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm actually completely serving from my heart and soul.
Yeah.
You know, like this is just chitter chatter is just not even true. So it's sometimes people laugh like, I can't believe I've been beating myself up about this. This is not even, it really
That's
has
how
no merit.
trauma works, right? Like
Mhm.
oftentimes the trauma that's sitting in our bodies, those limiting beliefs, those disparaging thoughts, things like that, they actually are the voice of someone else that we
Mhm.
somehow, we embodied at some point because it was about something else that rang true for us in some way. Like maybe it's even just a little bit of kind of like you were saying with the paper bag, right? Like our body says, I don't
Mhm.
have time to deal with this right now. So we're going to stuff that away and save it for later because it's just, we don't have time for it. It could be something that someone said to you that
Mhm.
wasn't meant to be an insult, but it really struck a chord with you in some way. And you were like, ooh, that didn't feel good. Let me pack that away. And then we have this supercomputer in our brain that's like, oh, let me look for every single thing that resonates
Mhm.
with that and put it in that bag too. Right. And then this bag becomes this like heavy thing that we're carrying around, sitting in our body somewhere that we don't even know what's there. And then when you start tapping, all of a sudden you're like, blah, 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 like all this stuff comes out, and you're like, where was that even living? Like, where did that
Mhm.
come from? And then you feel better, and you're like, well, no wonder I feel better. I just unloaded this load of crap that's been sitting in my body for sometimes decades, sometimes lifetimes. Sometimes it's somebody else's that we've kind of like inherited down the line and didn't even
Mhm.
realize that was ours to carry.
Mhm.
That's really powerful, which kind of gets into your matrix work that you
Mhm.
do. Do you want to talk about that a little bit too?
Sure. Yeah. So, I don't want to call it basic because it's really profound, but just basic EFT can be so incredibly helpful. And then there's this next level of how you can use EFT. It's a lot easier to do with a practitioner, but it's called matrix reimprinting or hacking reality. And that is essentially where we can go in and do some tapping on our younger self that experienced the trauma or decided the limiting belief. And we can tap away that disruption in the hologram of the younger self and create a new empowering belief in that moment, and then send that ripple effect out into our future self, our past self, to all the younger selves in the timeline. And it's just amazing. It's just, I highly recommend it. So if someone were to want to learn EFT, you need to go through EFT level 1 and level 2, and then you can learn to get the basics of it, which I think it should be taught in schools, and everyone needs to have this tool in their back pocket because you
Yeah.
literally have this superpower at the tips of your fingers to feel better at any time. And then once you have that base, then you can learn how to step into that picture and kind of patch up. And most of the time it's explaining to that younger self, because kids usually have two main decisions they make when they go through an experience like that. I'm unlovable, or the world is not a safe place to be.
Yeah.
So those are usually, it's not always, but those are usually the two. And so we can start by saying, like, how do you feel about this that just happened? And we're explaining to that younger self, because they are doing the best that they can to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you're learning how to
mhm.
be in the world, and yet at that point in our lives, I mean, think about any interactions that you've had with a really young child, right? Like they don't have the cause to be worried about things like, where is my food coming from, where, in most situations, I will
Mm-hmm.
say, depending on what situation you're growing up in, but like, small babies, they're there to eat, sleep, get love, give love, and like there's very basic, interactions that they're having throughout their day. And so one, slight thing that disrupts that, and it may be, it's time for me, as a baby, it's time for me to get love now. And mom or dad or moms, whoever it is that are, caring for you, may not fit into their schedule at that time. And so you're like, well, wait, why? I'm here for love, and why is it not being given? Why am I not receiving this? I'm giving it, but it's not being reciprocated. And that can start to create those beliefs like, well, wait a minute, well, maybe is it me, and it starts out really innocent and often very much not even cognitive, that we're really thinking about these. We just start to experience it, and then that builds, right? Like I said, that supercomputer's like, oh, here's an example of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? You wanted a hug, and your mom was busy making dinner, and so there's another example, you are unlovable. And these things get overblown and exaggerated in our subconscious mind, even though when we spit them out, right, they sound completely
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous as an adult, but somewhere in our existence still lives that little kid energy that is experiencing that, and it's true for them.
Absolutely. And it oftentimes is totally passed down unconsciously. Like
Yeah.
if I'm a little kid and I'm playing with my fire truck in the living room and I hear mom and dad fight, and I could go, "Oh, it's not safe to play." And
Yeah,
that decision happens in a moment.
it does.
And then throughout our lives, that's why it's good to work with a practitioner, because we might not have we have the blinders on a lot of times for our own stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what another thing I was thinking about with this soul wisdom is that when you're working one-on-one, you get to be that sacred mirror, or have somebody be that sacred witness for you, where a coach could see that, well, it's not safe to play.
Right.
For one person that might be like, yeah, duh, it's not safe to play, and someone else would be like, whoa, let's talk about that a little bit more, where, and find out where that came from. Because fast forward to today, you know working 80 hours a week and not, like, those things are so deep, sometimes we can't see them. So
Well,
that's the magic, is going in and rewriting the script in our software of that computer.
and that can manifest in so many ways too, like several things dropped in of like, maybe that person becomes deathly afraid of fires and they don't know why, right?
Mm.
Or every time they
Yeah.
hear a fire siren, they're like triggered by it and have to like, and feel this anxiety in their body. But that really is just kind of going back to that visual experience that they had of, I see this fire truck, I'm playing, I'm safe, and then all of a sudden this fighting comes in and now it's no longer safe. And that
Mm.
becomes this subconscious level of experience of trauma sitting in their body that they get triggered by just walking through the world and don't understand why that is.
Mm.
And yeah, I love that, having a coach a practitioner or someone there with you. The way I speak about it is to say, I help you interpret what is
Mm.
unseen, or what is, you know, your soul wisdom speaks to you in a particular language. For me, I often receive that through patterns and symbology. Like there's five different categories that your soul wisdom really can speak to you through. So there's thinking, there's images, movement, emotions, and sensory. And so those are the categories that it comes through, but it doesn't mean that there aren't intricacies of that, right? So images can include things that look like a
Mhm.
snapshot of memory. It might be just a color, it might be a physical pattern that you see, but you might also sense that pattern or a rhythm, or you might feel it somewhere in your body. And so we all have different ways of receiving through those channels and also expressing through those channels. And we interpret them, myself as a practitioner, yourself as a practitioner, right? We use our own ways of existing in those to partner with our clients and to help them interpret through your language what they're experiencing in their own language, right? And then you have this common language of spoken word. And so that's really how you do it. Like you have a soul wisdom exploration every time you go into a session with someone or a class or a workshop, and we choose the people to be our mentors, our practitioners that speak a similar language, right? So what you're talking about in with the matrix work that you do, and even with tapping, like that for someone else, for me, I would probably do that work in past life, explorations. And so it might look like I see lifetimes actually as not being linear necessarily. So it's sometimes other lifetimes, sometimes it's future, sometimes it's past. But um, you explained to me this hallway that you walk down, right? So you start at the beginning of your life and that you walk down this hallway, and at the end of the hallway is the end of your life. I might look at that through timelines of different lifetimes that you've experienced and tune into it there. Either way, it's there's this support system that's coming in and holding your hand to walk with you so that as you explore that hallway or those lifetimes, you have someone there to turn to and say, what do you think this is about? Right. And you
Mhm.
have a conversation about it, whatever language that conversation comes through in.
I love that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes there are solo journeys that we have, right? And things like meditation, um, maybe your personal practices, right? I think there's an importance in some of having those solo journeys, and there's also importance in having community experiences. Maybe it's one-on-one, maybe it's finding a community of people that are doing that same kind of work, because different things happen in those different spaces.
Definitely.
Can
Yeah.
you? Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, that's all. Yeah, I was just thinking about sometimes I like one-on-one, solo, and a group. Depending on what the topic is, it could be really
Yeah,
nice to have all of those.
because you're coming at it from different directions, right? And there is, like, I was thinking about, so I took a class with Steph of actually two different classes where there was a one-on-one component. Well, not as much a one-on-one component. I could have done that, I suppose, but I didn't have that particular piece of it. But there was a solo component. So it was a pre-recorded class where I could walk through the content on my own. And daily we met in the morning as a group to walk through it together. And there was something really potent about that group and just having everybody in the same space that was so supportive. And there were times when I would go through and do the videos on my own, just in my own time. Sometimes before we'd meet for the group, sometimes I would go back in and do it again after, because there was a level of integration that was happening in that space that I needed to have, like, that personal experience of it. But having the community there too, um, the amplification of that energy was just amazing, right? Like it just was huge. Um, Tell me about your experience of it from the practitioner's point of view.
Well, I don't know if it's just luck or what, but I feel like that was an amazing group.
It was an
And
amazing group. Yeah.
I feel really lucky and honored to work with the people I get to work with. As a practitioner or as the group leader, because I make these videos and I made them on with purpose of I've helped hundreds of people now work through different things. So I'm taking the top most difficult things, making a video specific for that, and then guiding someone through that whole process. So it's not, even though there's so much love and support, it's not like sunshine and rainbows. Like, we are talking about the deep, deep, deep stuff. But
Yeah.
for me, the magic of it and just the love vibration of it was when someone would share. like we would all tap on one topic together for the day, but when someone would share, it would just open up this dialogue for like, I'm not the only one struggling with this.
Mhm.
And it just created this community of like support. And I just have to share because it's coming through right now. And I wrote about this in my book of the sacred witness and the sacred mirror,
Mm.
which to me really came through when I was doing those groups. Because, okay, so let me see if I can explain it because I'm like writing about it right now.
Yeah, I'm so curious about this.
So I believe it's one of my book is about EFT for sensitive people and how it can help them in various areas of life, money, health, love, all kinds of things. Because sensitive people tend to take on stuff that's not theirs, or um, just be really hyper aware and can be hard on themselves, usually more than other people. So being that sacred witness, I found, and a lot of this came through that group, is when some of the most loving, extraordinary people on this planet are the hardest on themselves. And I haven't found an eloquent way to say this yet. Maybe you can help me with that. But like some of the most asshole kind of people, I don't know how to say that, are not hard on themselves at all. Like they are not.
I think it's the way that people are processing pain.
Mm,
Um, because sensitive people, when we say sensitive people, we mean empaths, we mean highly sensitive people,
mhm,
right? Like people who actually, if you think about, really explore what's happening from a soul wisdom perspective, they are embodying the experience of someone else, or embodying the experience of what's happening in the world, what's happening in the collective. And I can speak about this because I do, right? Like I have a very earth grounded experience, and I actually consume concepts, I consume emotions, I consume experiences in my body, and I feel them in my body. Now, if you don't know that that's what's happening when you
mhm,
consume it in order to understand it, right? Like I need to actually take it in, feel it in my body, like get into it and experience it as
mhm,
if it were my own. And that can be really uncomfortable, right? And so if you're walking through the world and you don't understand that all these things that you're consuming, it's like, I think of it like Pac-Man, right? Like you're walking through the world, it's like honk, 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 and you're just chomping down like, picking up that person's experience and this person and
mm,
that person, and suddenly all of a sudden you're like, "Whoa!" Like I just,
mhm,
so much, there's too much going on, but you don't realize that these things are not your own. Then you're gonna take it out on yourself, right?
mm,
Like, oh, you're these echoes of these things and the way that they're feeling, they sit in your body and you think they are you, they become your identity. And so you become really hard on yourself. Oh, I'm no good, right? That was something you heard from someone down the street. Oh, I'm ugly, I'm too
mhm,
fat, I'm too, I'm poor with money, I don't, all of these things, all of these beliefs come from things that you've consumed to understand, but didn't have necessarily the tools to process them and then take them out again, right? And go, oh, okay, now I understand what that feels like
mhm,
or what that looks like, what they're trying to say when they're really doing that. And let me now set that down and walk away and continue on with my identity of who I am. Now, vice versa, there are some people who reflect energy. It's almost like they have, if you think about, so this very sensitive people are consuming it and feeling it in their bodies, right? If you're not highly sensitive, but maybe you are a very verbal learner, you have to actually speak something in order to understand it. So you have to, you, instead of consuming it and feeling it in your body, you actually speak it through your words, you speak it through your actions. And so when they're walking through the world, they're also picking up all these things, right? And maybe they're picking up those things that you have embodied in your body, and you're sitting there being hard on yourself. And then they show up as a reflection, and they speak that back through because they receive it from you and it bounces right back out their mouth and speak those horrible things. And they're not seeing that as themselves because they're always seeing it as something outside of them. Even if it is something that's happening internally, they speak it out, but it's never directed at themselves because they're just trying to understand it through the words. I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, yeah. And well, the thing is that sensitive person that's hard on themselves, they are brilliant at seeing the divinity in everybody else.
Yeah.
It's just a part of that gift. So
Yeah.
to have a group where you each person in the group is just like, look at these amazing, talented, smart women. And so it's the magic is turning that, like, that gift to, I can see the beauty in everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
and then turn that sacred witness and turning it around. I kind of imagine it was just like, okay, I see all that, and then turning it around and then seeing that beauty in yourself.
Yeah.
That's the sacred mirror.
I love
Instead
it.
of being hard on yourself, of like turning that around and being like really observing
Mm-hmm.
the essence of our own beauty without judgment.
Yeah. Well, and that circle of women, it was all women, I think, that were in
I
that
think it
group,
was.
but
Mm-hmm.
each one of those people having that gift, right? And being able to embody the experience of someone else and reflect that back out to them and see that beauty in them. Then, like in that circle, like you said, that mirror, it gets turned around, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, because you have all these people
Mm-hmm.
that are echoing that back to you, then you're picking that up. It's like this beautiful um, reverberant reverberation, I guess is like the word that wants to come up, or like an echo of just it, and it
Mm-hmm.
sits in this sacred circle of, okay, now we've we've just done all this work to tap into out all of these the feelings that are icky in those thoughts, and we've cleared those, and now we have this space to bounce around these other really beautiful confirmations of who we are and how we show up in the world. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
a really beautiful space.
It was great, and I'm so grateful I got to meet you there.
Yes, definitely. Me too. Yeah, it was one of those things where I always like to talk about how I meet people because it's just interesting. I have these little like twinges of um, just like nudges from my soul wisdom guidance. And the day that I talk about the law of attraction, so we'll talk about the law of attraction for a second. The day that I received an email with the offer for your class, it was actually not from you directly. I didn't know who you were at that point. I was writing in my journal in the morning, and I was talking about how there's some tool that I have in my awareness that is calling to me. It's asking for me to use it. And yet I couldn't figure out what it was, and I was like, I don't know what it is. There's just like, I know there's something that's in my
Mm.
awareness. It's come up several times, and I can feel it telling me, like, pick up this tool and use it. And I was like, yet I
Wow.
don't know what it is. I don't think I've ever told you this before,
I
have
didn't know that.
yeah. And the thing that I was like really frustrated with actually was in that moment, I was actually really frustrated with just kind of like my body and state of being with, weight and exercise and feeling really unmotivated. And I was like, I don't know, there's just this block that I'm not able to get through. And yet I can't identify what it is. And there's this tool that I'm supposed to use to help me. Well, I finish up my journal, I close it, I open up my email on my phone, and I had received an email from, I think it was Jenner from
Mm-hmm.
the Wild Network. I don't even know what it's called, but anyway, Jenner um, had some email, and it was like, oh, Steph has this class on using tapping for weight loss. And I was like, okay, thank you, universe. I mean, like, because I had
Mm.
um tapping was definitely a part of my awareness. Like, it was something that kept coming up. I have several friends who would talk about, like, oh, I just did a tapping session and I feel amazing. And I was like, okay. And it was always this thing that was very abstract to me of Sure, that sounds like a great tool. Someday I'll look into that. I'll figure out what it is. And this was just so blatantly like, here you go. You asked, and here it is. And so I was like, great, I'll sign up for that. And it happened to be this really amazing experience. So, yeah, it was fantastic, and I use tapping all the time now.
Yay. Well, I'm glad that. Thank you, universe.
Absolutely. Okay, well, on that note, tell us a little bit about how people can connect with you if they want to tap with you, or if they want to learn tapping from you or read your book. Tell us how to find you.
Yeah, so the best way to get started tapping right away is to go to my YouTube channel, Tapping with Steph, and you can just try it, see how it feels. It's very experimental, and even though it might seem a little weird at first, tapping on your face, but it's something you need to feel in your body. So go try it. If you are interested in my new book coming out,
Yeah.
it's going to be great. And you can go to my website, stephDodds.com, and get on my newsletter, and you can get a little tapping through the chakras free guide I have on there. So it has all like the what, when, how, where, and why of tapping, and then you will be able to be notified this summer when the book
Yay.
is ready.
Excellent. What is your book called? Do you know?
It's called How Not to Cry, Emotional Freedom for Sensitive People. So
Oh,
it's
I
all
love it.
about how your tears are the actual medicine you need to move through your emotions so that you're not fighting up against them and
Yeah.
fighting back.
Tears. The study of actually tears themselves is super fascinating also. If you've never looked at that, like, just go Google it, and tears are amazing. Um, Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I will put the links in on all the different platforms. Make sure those are there. And yeah, super excited to chat with you today and explore tapping and how that shows up in our soul wisdom in different ways. So thank you, everyone, for watching. And thank you, Steph, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.